Well, what about a ceasefire? The Ukrainians are rightfully very hesitant about agreeing to one for the simple reason that there's nothing to stop Putin from rearming and attacking again. The sanctions are unlikely to go away in the event of a ceasefire, and the West is unlikely to provide Ukraine with any guarantees that would prevent a third Russian invasion. Bro, these are... The point I'm trying to make is that these are pro-Ukrainian accounts that would have a year ago would be screaming bloody murder when I said this. 2 years ago, they would have been like, you are literally a Putinist Nazi. Oh, let's talk about Ukraine briefly as well.
Well, meanwhile, let's talk about Ukraine, because more American weapons are on their way to the front line there. And for that country's troops, really, those supplies can't come quickly enough. Russian forces, we know, are making advances in the area around the city of Kharkiv. They've seized a string of villages and they forced thousands of Ukrainian civilians to flee from those areas. And the message that more US weapons are coming was delivered in person by the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. He's arrived in Kyiv. He came by a sleeper train for a surprise, unannounced visit for talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. It's the first visit to Ukraine by a senior US official since Congress finally passed that long-delayed $61 billion military aid package for Ukraine last.
By the way, this is also why I think it's insane when Nancy Pelosi say that, like, these people who are defending Palestine are like lovers of Russia. It's like, bro, there is literally no better momentum for Vladimir Putin right now than the massive political L's that the American state is taking as they showcase their hypocrisy every single fucking day. And also they take advantage of the opening, like the Russian government takes advantage of the opening that is caused by everyone shifting their attention and resources to Israel's offensive genocidal campaign. It's ridiculous.
Last month. Well, our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse has been following.
Also, I forgot to run the 3-minute ad break. I'm going to run it now.
Good morning, State Secretary. Nice to meet you again. Olena, Chief of Protocol.
A 9-hour sleeper train is still the best way to Kyiv, even if you're America's top diplomat. A quick switch to a more familiar motorcade before a long day of meetings. First up for Antony Blinken, President Zelensky.
Not simple period for Ukraine.
Imagine being invaded by Russia and then seeing this while the Russians advance. Bro, this is literally Adam Curtis. Oh my God. I know it's like meme-y and kind of cliche to say like this is so Adam Curtis, but this is literally so fucking Adam Curtis. This is Adam Curtis B-roll, like straight up. And to the cacophony of sound, Russian forces advanced into Kharkiv as Secretary of State Antony Blinken, with not a shred of irony, chose to play Rocking in the Free World. My friend is Ukrainian. She said the U.S. put conditions on the weapons that made it so the draft is stricter and more enforced, so her husband will have to serve against his will. I'm furious it's gotten to this point. Kharkiv is my family's home city. Still have friends living there because they have nowhere to go, scared of what might happen. That's great, man. That's cool. Keep on rocking in the free world, dude. If this was a scene in a movie, I'd have to say this movie was unbelievable. The tragedy is that he's a mediocre guitarist, but a better guitarist than a Secretary of State. Just, I don't know. I don't know what to say about this.
And a tough period for the east of our country, for our warriors. Thank you that you came, especially these days, to support Ukraine.
This is the first high-level US visit since the unblocking of a $61 billion military package for Kyiv. Welcomed, yes, but delayed by political disagreements and now slow deliveries.
We know this is a challenging time, but we also know that in the near term, the assistance is now on the way. Some of it's already arrived, more of it will be arriving, and that's going to make a real difference against the ongoing Russian aggression on the battlefield.
And this is what it looks like now. A year and a half of stalemate has suddenly turned into a significant Russian offensive in a week. Thousands are fleeing their homes in the northeastern Kharkiv region. Russian bombs have rained down for 5 days, and invading troops are getting closer. Keep talking to us, says this police officer to 71-year-old Olga. She was injured in an explosion, and their car is now an ambulance. They meet paramedics. We're told she's in a serious condition. The newly homeless end up here, in Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv.
People are terrified, they are stressed.
Do you think Russia will take Ukraine? Bro, if you think I'm going to give you a fucking prediction on Russia, Ukraine, you must be on crack cocaine. Okay? If you think I am going to say anything but just go, you're out of your goddamn mind. Bro, they are so horny right now in the trenches waiting for a slip up so they can like shift the attention away from how fucking unhinged they've been towards like someone who has personally tried their very best to physically be like inoffensive to as many people online as possible, like Ludwig, basically demonstrating to onlookers how fucking insane they are. Okay? They're salivating at the prospect of something that they can clip out of context.
So they keep their animals with them. So everyone is in a huge stress because of the constant shelling and of the shock of the Russian offensive.
Bro, this is way bigger than dumbass streamer drama. I mean, I also don't know. I don't know the fucking answer to your question. I genuinely don't know. I do know, however, that like something's got to give. Okay? Something's got to give. I've been asking the Americans that keep lying, telling tall tales of to the Ukrainians about how long and how committed they are, okay, to supporting the Ukrainian cause, while simultaneously not giving a shit at all, as like Ukraine is basically running into a hurdle, not necessarily of like American munitions, which certainly is a problem, but beyond American munitions, it's been months now where Ukrainians on the fucking ground, Ukrainians on the ground have been saying like they're running out of people. It's not necessarily just that like we don't have enough weapons or anything. It's that they also don't have enough people. Where is it? Someone, Elent News said something, but I missed it. The attack in Kharkiv is literally a diversion attack to pull Ukrainian forces away from Donetsk, where the main Russian push is. Ukrainian military leaders only make such statements in Western media, while people in Ukraine are fed propaganda about winning war. Facing Russian advance, the top Ukrainian general paints a bleak picture. Ukraine's forces are stretched thin and have minimal reserves to draw on, the chief of military intelligence said, in addition to shortages of weapons. Facing a Russian advance, top Ukrainian general paints a bleak picture. You don't have to say it, but it's clear that Ukraine is being used. This has nothing to do with fighting for freedom or any of that bullshit. This is simply a fund arms depot trying to waste Russian arms. Yeah, no, I have been saying that. I, as a matter of fact, have not stopped saying that. the American interest, no matter what, is always going to be about using and abusing whoever, even if their cause of emancipation is just. And Ukraine's emancipatory cause is certainly just. They are being invaded by a much larger force, viciously, as a matter of fact. That is unconscionable, that is unacceptable. Russia's actions are ridiculous, violent. The problem is a lack of interest from the American side to offer assurances to the invading force. Whether they agree to it or not, down the line, doesn't matter. Ceasefire should be the ultimate goal here. And if ceasefire doesn't work, then there you go. You have more political momentum for Ukraine. You know what I mean? But no, that's unacceptable, unimaginable. Ukrainians don't want it. Ukrainians don't want it. The fact that we are saying like, no, you're gonna win this, I promise. You're gonna win this, I promise. And Ukrainian media is like, no, we're gonna win this, I promise. We're gonna win this, I promise. And then simultaneously, like waiting for a point of no return, so that even the Ukrainian people start rising up against their own military, against their own fucking administrations, to be like, dude, we're dying. We have to put an end to this, is ridiculous. Ultimately, I don't know how many deaths have to happen until it gets to that point. Did you just describe a meme? Did I? Maybe.
For now, Kharkiv city is a place of relative safety. But for how long? While few think the Russians are capable of taking it, they could soon be in artillery range.
No criticism for Russia. Yeah. When I said Russia's actions are abhorrent, violent, unconscionable, unacceptable. Remember when I said that? And when I said the Ukrainian cause of emancipation is just and valid, I actually didn't, this chatter didn't hear that at all because he had fucking clutter in his ears, I think. The fuck are you saying? Do you just like have selective hearing? Because there's not a single moment where I haven't fucking criticized Russia for invading Ukraine since the invasion of Ukraine. I don't know. I don't know what else to say, man. It's like hyping up your friend to fight the 6'8" guy at the club when your buddy is 5'7" and your help is throwing stuff at him to use in the fight, but not even. From soldiers to generals everywhere, The Economist spoke to over the past week, knows that Ukraine lacks the resources to get back to its 1991 borders as its politicians have promised. By the time the new American aid package was approved on April 24th, it was rationing ammunition. Colonel Fedosenko says he was down to give 5 shells a day for his American Paladin howitzers. My men were fighting with spades in trenches. Colonel Fedosenko feels it may have reached its peak. Only a few weeks ago, he says, Russian infantry backed by 10 to 20 armored vehicles and tanks were launching assaults every 2 to 3 hours. Now they attack only every 5 days or so. Okay, this is good. This actually is a change. Okay, but everyone knows that when negotiating and with Russia, and every public statement is negotiating, you start with your maximalist position. This wasn't the maximalist position. People were talking about retaking Crimea. So honestly, the fact that a standby Ukraine account is now saying, "Oh no, that was just a maximalist position for negotiation," is seemingly, decent prospects for a ceasefire, for an attitude. I don't know how big this fucking account is. Doesn't seem like it's a valid account, but the fact that they are saying this, Ukraine would accept pre-2/24/22 status quo. The issue is that Putin just amassed 500,000 casualties, taking the Crimea land bridge, and going back to the status quo would mean they were squandered for nothing in his eyes. Well, what about a ceasefire? The Ukrainians are rightfully very hesitant about agreeing to one for the simple reason that there's nothing to stop Putin from rearming and attacking again. The sanctions are unlikely to go away in the event of a ceasefire, and the West is unlikely to provide Ukraine with any guarantees that would prevent a third Russian invasion. Bro, these are fucking... The point I'm trying to make is that these are pro-Ukrainian accounts that would have, a year ago would be fucking screaming bloody murder when I said this. 2 years ago, they would have been like, you are literally a Putinist Nazi. Okay. This attitude is one that I've held since literally the Antalya, the Turkish negotiations, the 15-point bargaining, the 15-point ceasefire negotiations that were agreed upon. Even if they're not a Ukrainian account, the fact that like a pro-Ukrainian account ostensibly dedicated to stand with Ukraine saying such things is actually kind of wild, considering that those very same accounts would have been fucking telling me that I am a Duginist, lover of Vladimir Putin, and that what the Ukrainians want is just like to fucking live and die by the sword. I'm just saying. As a Ukrainian, I hope our suicidal government finally gets his head out of his ass so I can see my family after 2.5 years. I call you a Duginist all the time, but you never acknowledge. That's sick, man. Thank you, Prager You. What is this? Regret to inform you the Russian poll is getting better. Russian propaganda is getting better. Do I even want to watch this shit?
Нічого, тату. Не плач. Тримайся. Все буде добре. Тронко! Завантажуй цих! Батько наш Бандера, Україна мати, ми за Україну будемо воювати. Батько наш Бандера, Україна мати, ми за Україну будемо воювати.
I don't understand. Doesn't this imply that they're literally fucking attacking and failing to overtake cities where the predominant force of defense is like old men and women? Like, I get the point that they're trying to make, which is that like, oh yeah, the Ukrainian forces basically have no one left. You know, it's just like they're literally expanding the draft, which is true. That's a, you know, politically touchy subject. A lot of Ukrainians understandably escaped when Russia invaded, and now it's getting to become a problem. There are literally Ukrainian refugees in this chat that can't return home right now. But it's wild that they would put this propaganda up as a own to be like, hey, you know who we're shooting at right now, dude? Old ladies. We're shooting. We're flexing on killing. This is so Israel coded, bro. I swear to God. It literally is like, dude, Russia's behavior. Vladimir Putin was so honest in that Tucker Carlson interview where he's like, why can't we be your Israel? Like, what's this about? We just want to be your Israel, man. America, let me be your Israel. I'd be so goddamn good to you. We have natural resources. Israel doesn't even have that shit. It's fucking kind of sad, but also kind of funny that they're just like, yeah, we're doing it, man. We're killing all these old people, and they're still putting up a strong defense against our. No, literally, like this is an insane thing to flex on. Like, oh, bro, this straight up, this is exactly the type of shit that I would see from you know, Israeli Hasbara operations. This is supposed to reach the Ukrainian audience too. It's all in Ukrainian, not Russian. No, I know that the goal here, the motivation here is to be like, see, your government is like fucking sending you in harm's way, and making you fight to the last Ukrainian. Bitch, fighting against who? It's not like they're fighting against a hurricane. They're not fighting against the earthquake. They're fighting against you, motherfucker. Stop killing them. Obviously, having said that, like, it can be, I mean, I know that there's one way to get people to not be on board, because remember, Ukraine is a nation state, okay? Something you have to always consider, and this is something that I've talked about quite a bit. Ukraine is a nation state. Sure, very poor. Sure, not exactly the best beacon of, liberal democracy or anything, but it's still a nation that had its own boundaries, had its own relative sovereignty, had its own culture, had its own form of techno music, CSGO players. It's not like Gaza in that sense, where the Gazan population doesn't have anywhere to fucking go, whereas the Western world basically welcomed a lot of Ukrainian refugees. You know what I mean? The people have an understanding of relative safety. The people in Ukraine have an understanding of like relative peace and living a life as like a marketing manager. You know what I mean? Not that long ago. So for them, I suspect that they would probably, given the relative comfort in comparison to like Palestinians in Gaza, they are less likely to, join join their brothers in arms and put up an armed resistance front. And that's probably the reason why the Ukrainian government is forced to take like politically damaging moves and take further action. How do you tell the difference between Ukrainian and Russian language and culture, though? You can't. Bro, don't even get me started on this, okay? Don't even fucking get me started on this conversation. People are going to get so mad at you for saying that. And I'm just simply going to tell you, I don't agree. Okay? I would never say such things. I don't fucking agree. Oh my God, every Redditor is going to yell at you and me now for even reading out that comment. I'm just serving the 3-minute ad break, okay? At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. And guess what? Ukrainian and Russian, totally different. Different cultures, different language, so different, okay? I definitely can tell. And it's fucked up that you can't. You haven't been in the Reddit trenches long enough. Different letters, my brother in Christ. Russians literally can't understand Ukrainian. I suspect it's the difference is maybe even less, maybe even more marginal, I would say, than the difference between like Azerbaijan and Turkey. Both speak a different form of Turkic. People in Azerbaijan can understand Turkish, but people in Turkey cannot really understand the Azeri language. Okay? Yeah, life was peaceful unless you lived in Donbass, but fuck them, I guess, right? Yeah, dude, you're so right. You're so right. Vladimir Putin actually invading Ukraine made the situation so much more sustainable for everyone east of the Dnieper River. Like, no one... How can you still say this with a straight face, bro? Hundreds of thousands of people fucking wounded, killed, people displaced, millions of people displaced from their homes. This motherfucker's like, but dude, Donbass, remember 14,000 people died. 14,000 people died. Yeah, dude, that's why it's great that, 10x of the number of casualties have now occurred on fucking both sides. It's so sick. Vladimir Putin liberated Donbass by what? Fucking rolling tanks over everything and mining literally mining the fucking waterfront, dude. It's so liberated now, you don't understand. He literally agrees with you, bro. No, anyone that brings up Donbass in this situation, is basically doing the same fucking, the same line that people have been running in the same way, and I'm not even gonna lie, in the same fucking way that like Israelis talk about October 7, okay? It's just like you're kind of giving Israel, sweetie. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, Elent News is correct. He was doing, come on, the invasion is a little bit righteous. They were getting shelled every day by their own government since 2014. I mean, fuck Putin, but that is what it is. Yes, brother, but you also have to remember something very important here, okay? invading Ukraine made it so much worse for hundreds of thousands, if not millions more people. Okay? It's not like the utilitarian solution, and it never was. And if I could recognize it at the time, then you could too, I think, or you should be able to, at least, you know, however many years after the fact. Anyway, Russia did not start this war. Dude, Russia absolutely started this war. Listen, I've gotten shit on a lot for what I've said about Crimea. Okay? I've gotten shit on by NATO Andes a lot for, one, the annexation of Crimea and my position on it. Two, for the refusal from both parties to implement the Minsk protocols. Okay? Every single person, every single NATO dick rider has been up my asshole for so long because they say I'm pro Vladimir Putin. Okay? None of that justifies the invasion of a country with 40 plus million at the time, 44 million people whose entire national identity and its entire nation state project literally revolves around not being Russian. Okay? That's it. It's ridiculous. And I don't care how many people in the fucking global south think that what Russia's doing is great. I don't care. Okay? I don't care. I am by no means a defender of Western imperialism, but this does not mean that I'm going to defend another capitalist fascist fucking state encroaching upon the borders of another state, regardless of however many fucking Nazis are there. Okay? And as I've detailed time and time again, despite the fact that, once again, every fucking annoying Redditor pro-NATO piece of shit has said time and time again, since day one, since the first day of the Russian invasion, I told you, you do not denazify a country by invading it. Okay? You do not. Doesn't work that way. Unless we're talking about Nazi Germany, in which case we didn't denazify hard enough. Okay? The only thing you do in this day and age when you invade a country with a nationalism problem, okay, especially if you are Russia and the country that we're talking about is Ukraine, is basically galvanize the Nazis, galvanize the nationalists, and basically make the entire country go, oh, those guys were so right this whole time. Okay? It is true that the invasion heavily empowered the right wing and eliminated every left-wing party. Yes. The war government also took actions like that as well. But even beyond that, you turned every fucking person in Ukraine into an automatic, like, fuck Russia, they're Russian orcs ass attitude. Why shouldn't they feel that way? They got invaded by the Russian government. Also, currently, the Georgian government, on behalf of the RU government, is trying to begin implementing Russian-style repression step by step, as well as swift change on social policies, like wanting to introduce anti-LGBT laws that will censor media and make any LGBT protest of any kind illegal. They simultaneously are continuing to implement pro-business laws that make the country a tax haven. Wonderful. Neoliberalization is coming, whether you like it or not. Weren't they already doing anti-communist and anti-labor leftist on beforehand? Yes. They were. The West didn't help the situation by completely sidestepping the Minsk agreements. It's just a silly coincidence that talks broke apart after the Afghan collapse. The West fucked up the deal for the sake of weapons manufacturing profits. Yes. I've talked about the Western involvement in Ukraine every single day for months on end until the cows came home. The cows are home now. They're mooing. Okay? They're mooing. The cows have moved into, they're moving into Kharkiv. The idea that, like, there was always a political option to exhaust, especially when you already have Crimea, especially when you took Crimea basically without fucking doing one single shot. The original position of the Russian government was to maintain Luhansk and Donetsk as autonomous regions under the Ukrainian government. Okay? The autonomous region under the Ukrainian government would have been an infinitely more favorable position for Ukraine as they moved in the direction of, not maybe becoming a full-blown EU nation or whatever, but at least like getting those sweet neoliberal trade agreements that the European corporations wanted and the American government wanted. Meanwhile, the only thing that this did was beef up German manufacturing, the German arms industry, and the entire global arms industry, as a matter of fact, so much so that they fucking ran out of artillery. They had to go to South Korea. I'm reading a Viet Cong memoir, and the author is explaining how the American occupation galvanized non-communists to become Viet Cong. So in the same way, Russian occupation is galvanizing more people to become Azov fascists. I mean, maybe not even Azov fascists, but like definitely way more reactionary. That's what war does, you know? Just like people become more reactionary at the top of the hour when they see a 3-minute ad break. But yeah, wonderful stuff overall.
Missiles routinely hit Kharkiv. If this offensive isn't contained, the destruction will be even greater. Ukraine is struggling to hold what is a new front line.
Well, we can go straight to James now. James Waterhouse, our Ukraine correspondent, who's live for us in Kyiv. And I suppose, as I mentioned at the beginning, these weapons that Antony Blinken says are coming, these new...
Oh, fuck, I ran the ad break already and I'm running it again? Fuck, I'm sorry. Well, after this coverage is over, I'm going to end the broadcast anyway, but...
Weapons supplies, they can't come quickly enough, really, for Ukraine and for those frontline forces who are dealing with this kind of surprise offensive which has been launched near Kharkiv.
Absolutely. I mean, Ukraine, Ben, is adamant that this wasn't a surprise, that it was merely sudden, but the inescapable reality is that its troops are struggling to contain this joint incursion. And it's not just in the Kharkiv region. There are more than 100 evacuations planned in settlements in the Sumy region further north, where there is constant shelling in another part of Ukraine which borders Russia. And it's there that an attack is anticipated too. You know, the dimensions of this invasion are changing dramatically in Russia's favor. Now, of course, whenever you have the military activity, you have the politics behind it. And Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, has just gone for a working lunch close to where I am in a pizzeria with his Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba. Not a bad place to take an American visitor. And as you say, the tone is very much of reassurance. But the problem for Ukraine doesn't just rest with delayed American weaponry. The country admits that it's already dragging what...
By the way, this change in pace in Georgia began last year, literally a week after our prime minister spoke at a CPAC conference. So my speculation is that he was given a conservative authoritarian blueprint to implement.
New reserve forces it has to the Kharkiv region, where it is also where they are still struggling. So things are looking really difficult for Ukraine in this perilous period.
And is there a sense, really, that Russia has been taking advantage of the sort of delay in getting these extra US weapons into Ukraine and using that time to mount these new attacks?
Absolutely. I think we've seen a gradual taper since last October, which is actually when the political disagreements really started to affect the freeing up of this American aid. You had more and more Ukrainian units having to ration ammunition, whereas you had Russia remaining on a war footing, mobilizing more men, which Ukraine, incidentally, has struggled with as by way of a domestic challenge. And so what Russia has done, notably in the east, was take more and more Ukrainian territory, square kilometre by square kilometre. It had a trophy in the form of the town of Avdiivka. They haven't stopped there. Their tactics are costly, but it's now changing to a new dimension.
James, very good to see you. Thank you very much for that. James Waterhouse there, our Ukraine correspondent. So let's talk a bit more about what are the arms and weapons that the United States is supplying to Ukraine and how they could make a difference on the front line. Well, the aid package agreed by Congress is, as we mentioned, worth more than $60 billion. It includes air defense interceptors, surface-to-air missiles designed to combat enemy bombers and reconnaissance planes. There's also more artillery, which has been in short supply as Ukrainian troops...
Ukraine would become a NATO ally and Russia would be left with a 100 million population shithole by the West? No. No. I know I'm very bad on Russia-Ukraine predictions, but especially as things stood in LPR and DPR, with Ukraine, with Crimea being occupied, annexed territory, permanently under Russian rule, there was absolutely zero fucking chance that Ukraine was joining NATO. Okay, 1% chance. I'm going to say 99%. Russia's invasion obviously made it even more impossible, but especially given the energy contracts that Russia has, the consistent trade that Russia has with European nations, like there's no fucking way. I just don't see a world in which like Germany or France would ever be like, yeah, we got to make Ukraine NATO. America doesn't even fucking say, like, even Americans will literally be like, yeah, NATO one day. One day. Probably not, though. I can't blame Russia for lashing out. You can't expect Russia to be subsumed to the bottom of the global market without some kind of security. Global capitalism and American hegemony caused the Ukraine war. I think America has a lot of blood on its hands, for sure. But I think Russia still has more blood on its hands because they are the ones who invaded instead of continuing to do normal fucking regional actor shit. Like, American involvement and interference in Ukrainian affairs, which is very real and was happening, okay, is still not evidence that all of these other global actors were going to allow a country into NATO where they are in the midst of ongoing conflict. That's crazy. I think it was a L regardless for Russia. Like, people will refuse to see my side on this if they are pushing Z, or even if they're like super anti-America, in the sense that like Russia, one, solidified NATO's stances, galvanized support from the public in European countries for NATO, showed regional actors that previously had neutrality agreements with Russia, like unspoken neutrality agreements with Russia, like Finland, and also the dual partnership that Finland has with Sweden. It showed them that it does not have the capacity for a land invasion, for an assault, for a full-blown assault, because its special military operation, which was slated to overpower Ukrainian anti-air defenses and basically overtake Ukraine. Maybe not a permanent annexation, but like maybe a decapitation strike. And then I don't know, go back to some kind of political machine that it would create inside of Ukraine, reasserting its dominance in Ukrainian politics, failed. The rest of the world saw, especially regional actors, saw that Russia was incapable of hurting them, but also was still violent and wild enough to even try. And now, a country with direct borders with Russia is in NATO, Finland. So it's another fucking massive political L in general.
Try to fight off those advances James was just telling us about. And finally, the US has sent ATACMS. Now, these are long-ranged, precision-guided missiles. They can strike Russian targets at a range of up to 300 kilometers. Separately, the European Union has agreed another 50 billion euros worth of aid after Hungary stopped blocking that deal.
Putin is a fascist, but he's a fascist because by American influence. His existence is depending on America constantly treating Russia as an economic adversary. America had every chance to treat Russia as an EU country, but chose to treat them as a constant threat. I mean, that part is true as well. One of the biggest strengths of Russia right now is that they have very talented technocratic economists who Putin lets cook to some degree. Their central bank governor, Elvira Nabiullina, has been almost single-handedly saving the ruble for the past 3 years. Finland was never a red line in the sand. Ukraine always was because of its proximity to capital. Come on, brother. You don't think it's fucking bullshit that now Finland also is a NATO country, further encircling Russia? It is bullshit. You can admit that that's a fucking L for Putin. He was too busy trying to, blow up babushkas in fucking eastern Ukraine that he you know, dropped the ball a little bit. If you're pro-Russia, if you're pushing Z, you should be critical of that even. You know, thank you, Vladimir Putin, for giving a massive gift to the American generals and to NATO. Yeah, let's put some fucking nukes in Finland, baby. Let's go. Directly pointed at Moscow. That's a brilliant tactician right there, dude. Y'all are playing checkers. He's playing chess, okay? You don't understand. You don't understand the might. You don't understand the fucking brilliance of Vladimir Putin, okay? He is so smart. That's why it's actually sick to fucking to beef up Finland and build NATO bases there. Thank you. It's good. He's playing chess. Trust me. Let him cook, dude. Okay? He's going to make the best borscht you've ever seen. Finland is 5 million people. What are they going to do? Bro, it doesn't matter that they're 5 million people. They fucking still have... They're still going to have literal weapons directed at Russia. It's yet another country. It is yet another country that now has NATO bases with a fucking border of Russia. Anyway, it's just not a good... It was not a good plan. It was a very bad plan, and it was very violent. That's why I think it's ridiculous that like the idea was that he was liberating Donetsk. I think an infinitely better way to go about it would have been to consistently beef up your trade alliances with Europe. America was way more threatened by that. Look at China, guys. Why do I dick ride China? Look at China. Look at the way China operates. Look at the way China operates, and look at the way Russia is operating as a regional actor. Okay? One just fucking kicks back. One just fucking kicks back and is just like, yeah, no, duke it out. Shit looks good. Shit looks mint from where I'm standing. Obviously, Russia in proximity is not like China. But America is bringing the NATO-style approach to China as well. Kick back, dude. You got so much fucking trade. Russia would have never been China. Russia isn't communist. Anyway. India is lying too, sir, not just China. Bro, India is... Okay. Anyway, I'm going to end it here because my family's getting nasty, angsty, because I told them I'd go to dinner with them, and it's late. There's no good guy, bad guy in the Russia war. No, there is. There is, definitely. There is. Like, the Ukrainians don't deserve to be invaded. I love you all. Wanted to give you guys at least a 7-hour stream. And that is all for today. I'll be back on Thursday, live from sunny Los Angeles, California. That is all. Peace.